Boards. Board games, board games, it's what we're talking about. Board games, board games, I'm not gonna shout. I am starting off this screaming with a little bit of singing. And over here, hey, it's a can. Oh no, wait, it's not a can at all. It's Ryan. And the name doesn't really matter, but this person is Ryan Estrada. We will talk about something Ryan loves, like the comics which you can see in the wall behind above. Board games and comics is what we're talking about. Board games and comics, I'm not gonna shout. Hey!
Hey!
Good morning, or evening, or afternoon, wherever you are. It is bedtime in some countries. I am Bez. We are blethering about board games and comics, of course. Today, we are comparing comics to board games with Ryan Estrada. Thank you for coming here, Ryan.
Thank you for having me. 15 years we just figured out it's been since we've spoken.
Yes, and hello, Alan. It is lovely to see you. And so, yeah, just to give a bit of context, yeah, Ryan and I met in Kopipi, an island close to a real place called Monkey Island. And, you know, Ryan wrote a comic about it. I had like a verse in a short song about it. I don't know if you did you hear that song ages back?
No, I didn't.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I'm gonna go. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, gonna go. Whilst I'm still alive, I wanna know how to get this living on the road. And here with you, everything's feeling good. But there outside, I felt alive. Went to PP, met my nemesis, got a kayak, just the two of us. Sea got stormy, waves are rocking and rolling, boat tumbled over. For a moment we were flying, and for a while I thought I'd die, till my hand held the kayak side. Passerby cries, "You alright?" Truth is, I never felt so alive. And that's totally true. Those things actually happened.
Yeah. We tried to kayak across the ocean because Leonardo DiCaprio swam it in a movie, so why not?
Well, you were inspired by Leonardo DiCaprio. Yeah. I was just kind of on a tight budget, and I was easily influenced.
I was just peer pressuring you into near death.
And yeah, we did possibly. It's kind of weird how you look back on something and then you think this was such a fun moment, but at the same time, there's a sense of recklessness and a sense of I don't want to endorse it because it was probably a bit damaging to the crabs and the coral that was around that side of the island that we had to walk past. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I don't think we damaged the crabs. They were just curious and like, what the heck are these people doing? They just scurried away and gave us some space. But yeah, hey. I mean, the proper boat was like $30 and the kayak was $5. So, you know, I think it ended up costing us like what, $100? Did you lose sound? Uh-oh. I don't hear anything.
Oh, you can hear me now, right?
Now I gotcha. Now I can hear you. Now you're frozen.
Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so Ryan Estrada. Who is Ryan Estrada? Ryan Estrada is someone that I met. They were doing these crazy comics. There was like a person called Scott McCloud who's done like a great comic called Zot. Is it Zot?
Yeah.
And anyway, so like this superhero comic where like, you know, it's kind of like a person from another world meeting this person from our world and then kind of comparing the superhero world to our world. And like later on in later chapters, it gets really kind of, yeah, self-referential, and it's almost postmodern in how it's deconstructing like the nature of comics. Anyway, so this amazing person, Scott McCloud, invented this thing called a 24-hour comic. Basically, you draw 24 pages in 24 hours. Ryan tried to do it and failed with 12 pages in 24 hours. Ryan then tried to do it in a half-hearted manner, doing 48 pages in 48 hours, but didn't actually do the text until later, I should point out. But then you did a kick-ass version, like the 72-hour comic. That was pretty darn awesome. And I've still got the original pages of that. This is like a crazy story all about time travel and stuff. And then you were going to do a 96-hour comic, but then you didn't. You went to CopyP instead, and you put an open invitation on the internet for crazy people to come and join you. I mean, you didn't actually say, if you're crazy, come and join me. You said, oh, feel free to come. We'll totally hang out. And so what I did is that I preemptively beat you. I quit my job because, to be fair, I was going into uni the next year in a few months. So it was like, you know what? I've saved a lot of money. I've been living at my parents' place. I've not had to pay rent. This was like ages ago when, you know, you wouldn't ask this young person to pay rent, you know, if you were a parent, you know, maybe now, like, it would. But anyway, the point is that I preemptively beat you with this 100-hour comic, and then met you in CopyP, and then we had that whole thing with the 168-hour comic that Ryan Armand beats you at in a very half-hearted manner, and then you did it to a 175-hour comic, just having an addendum like 7 pages at the end, pedexing, and that was a fun wee thing. And then I did 24 a day, which was basically for my entire year at college. I averaged 24 pages every single day. But that's not a thing that, yeah, I didn't even upload it. And I think we've decided between ourselves that actually uploading it has to be part of the qualifier for, you know, doing it. So potentially someone else, is it still 175 as the record? Do you even care about this anymore? Do you even care?
I mean, it's a fun story to tell.
I mean, like, if I did a 240-hour comic, would you then be inspired to do an even longer one?
Oh, God, no.
Those days are behind you.
Yeah, I'm old now. I've done a bunch of 12-hour comic days with people here in Busan, the art community. I bring people together. A lot of people done their first comic in those. So I do still love doing challenge comics, and I can't wait until we can gather again and do more of them here. But I think it'll be a while before, or I don't know that I'm gonna want to like nearly kill myself doing something like that again. I did I tried to surpass it once when I did a 1-month animated feature, and I tried to make an animated movie in a month, and I didn't quite finish. And then before I could finish, the day I was exporting my backups, someone broke in my house and stole my computer. So that was a huge failure. That is just, yeah, I don't know. I don't need to get back into all that anymore.
Hello, Euron. It's lovely to see you. And if you want to check out Ryan's stuff, it is ryanestrada.com over there. And there's all sorts of cool things which you can check out. There's an incredible bunch of stuff, but we're not here just to talk about comics. We're not here just to talk about board games. We are also to talk about potentially other brilliant things, brilliant things. What's the little thing which is brilliant? And you nominated
a piece of cardboard.
Cardboard is rather brilliant.
Yeah, this is actually the back page of a sheet of or a book of Bristol. That Bristol is like a thick paper that you can write, you draw on, like a little thick paper. And this was just the back page that just I think I first used this when I was doing the 168-hour comic. That was, or it might have been before that. I'm not sure, but I know I used it on that because I can see some of the marks from it. And I would just put this down when I was drawing because I didn't want to get ink on the table. and it just kind of became, I use it so much that now like I need this to draw. This is like my security blanket for drawing. And I've traveled all over the world for like a decade. I've lived in a new country every year, and I don't have belongings that I take with me around the world except for this one piece of cardboard that I've taken everywhere. And you can see all the little bits of ink from like the edges of pieces of paper and weird little notes I've made to myself that have worn out and I can't even read them. And so that's my piece of cardboard that I love very much.
That's an amazing story, how it's kind of like this security blanket. And of course, without cardboard, we wouldn't have boxes, which this is for that, or cards. I mean, you wouldn't have playing cards without cardboard. So cardboard is pretty brilliant. And
True.
yeah, I mean, I feel really impressed at how ecological you are. Alan Oughton asks, does it have any dents in it?
Oh, it's got tons of them. Look at these little corners here. They're all worn down. There's lots of little.
Because if there's dents in the middle, wouldn't that kind of mess up your pen when you're drawing?
Nah, it's so worn. It's got little waves in it. Nothing sharp. I don't know. It's I don't know. It's seen better days, but works pretty good.
Yeah, and I mean, it's certainly not messed up any of your art that I've seen.
I did something on 10/30 Tuesday, like 8 years ago. Who knows? Something had to be 8.7 by 12.25. I don't even know what all these notes are, but they're there.
And it's amazing, like how much stuff seeps through. Like I just fold up bits of paper 4 times, and yeah, I'm going to use all sides of the bits of paper, and that's my method. But yeah, when I'm actually drawing, I tend to just have a page that I kind of use on the back, and then I reuse that page, and then maybe I lose that page, if you know what I mean. But no, I've got a lot of admiration for actually keeping that sheets of cardboard. That's pretty awesome. Anyway, talking about highlights from other stuff, let's talk about more recent things. Recent highlights, living lives and seeing the sights. Recent highlights, playing games and other delights. Recent highlights. So what have you been enjoying recently? I mean, feel free to tell us whatever you would like.
Well, I mean, I've had a lot of recent highlights in my work. Banned Book Club came out. My other book, Student Ambassador, just came out. Those have done very well. We've been invited to meet like mayors of the cities that took place, and we've got to meet the head of the university and got treated like VIPs. But another thing that I brought for this, you said that we could talk about games that we've played. It's a board game show. I brought a board game that I'm a big fan of now that I've been playing called Backdoor.
Ooh.
This is put out by a studio called Hua Studios here in Busan. They're good friends of mine. I worked with them on some projects, and I love this game because it's a very traditional. It's based around a very traditional Korean game called Yutnori. That's just a very simple kids game. That's so just basically you roll and go around the circle like Candyland or anything, but. And this board is printed on hanbok fabric, which is very Korean. But they added these little card spaces where if you land on a card, you take a card and it makes a story out of it. Where like there's all these traditional Korean monsters and spirits that like will make you like change places with people or get an extra piece or something like that, or double your thing. And I like it because it's a very simple game, but you can draw a card. And it can create this domino effect where within one turn, everyone in the board is in a completely different place. And so that's my new cool thing that I've been playing is Backdoor.
Wow, that does sound super awesome. And I love the fact that it's so representative of where you are. And it just shows that even though board games might be a global phenomenon, there are so many that are so local. Things here that you'd never find in South Korea and vice versa.
Are you familiar with Ute?
I am not.
Ute is what they use in traditional Korean games instead of dice. Instead of what, usually they're much longer. These are like a little tiny modern version for this game, but they have like a white side and a brown side, and you just roll them. And then like right now, I got two are white side up, so I would go two spaces. And if you get all of them
like
white,
flipping
you just
coins,
pour,
but just you can roll a bit more.
yeah. And if you get all brown, then you move 5 spaces. It's very traditional gameplay elements. Usually they're long sticks like this, and there's like a flat side and a rounded side, but these are the little cute versions they made for this.
And Rowan says that they've had their first mindfulness session, and that worked well. They enjoyed it and are going to continue it. Awesome. And I will get to questions in just 2 or 3 minutes, starting off with the sillier stuff and then the more serious stuff, and then going to more on topic. But it's all a light-hearted chat. What I have enjoyed recently, I had my last day with my parents yesterday. So I don't mean that they've deceased, and fingers crossed, they will continue to live for a few years. But I mean that, given the state of the world and pandemics, I had to kind of make sure that I was isolating for a while before I went up, just out of courtesy to them, make sure I don't pass anything on to them, if you know what I mean. We stayed together for a couple of weeks, and it was really nice. And then we spent a final day together, just kind of doing the final bits of clearing up. Played a wee game together, had lunch together, and then I came down. And that was really nice. And on the way down, I was like, you know what? Yeah, I am actually feeling okay. And it's been a long time since I kind of felt like, yeah, I am actually feeling okay. So that was really nice. That also yesterday, Xate and Alan gave some great advice on the show. And yeah, some people are, just having good conversations and having good vibes and good chats with people, even if it's just through texting. I feel like even if it, I am so grateful for all the technology that we have around us. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was like, I'm kind of used to like this whole pandemic, because having lived in Korea my whole life, like a lot of my life is Zooming with people and online chatting and things like that.
Yeah, it's the way of the world, I guess, especially now.
Hmm.
Oh, are you ready for the questionably quick questions? Okay. Well, let's put you through a lot of the stuff. Where exactly are you in the world, and what time exactly is it?
I'm in Busan, South Korea, and it is 6:18 p.m.
Would you prefer to have a duck-sized meeple or a meeple-sized duck? Are you familiar with meeples?
I don't know what a meeple is.
So a meeple is a tiny wooden figurine of a human in a particular abstract shape. I could try and find a picture. But would you rather have like a giant ornament, or would you have like a tiny duck?
Tiny duck, obviously. Come on, I want to play with a tiny duck. Make little hats and put on there. Come on.
Do you think you could do proper caring for this duck?
Of course. Get little tiny pieces of bread.
Oh, down with Alan's words, and thank you very much, Owen. When exactly did you wake up?
Woke up. We usually get up at about 7 a.m., something like that.
Do you have breakfast?
Yeah.
What was the last thing you ate today?
Last thing I ate today was, what did we have? We had rice, and my wife made a little salad with like bean pancakes on it.
Man, that sounds fancy.
It was real fancy. She made this little bed of lettuce and stacked the pancakes in the middle, and they're crispy. Good stuff.
Iced coffee or hot tea?
Hot tea. Coffee. I don't drink coffee. freaks me out.
Okay, then iced tea or hot tea?
Iced tea.
What do you like to eat or drink whilst playing games?
Well, playing games, I usually just drink water because I'm a nerd. I'm just that's all. I'm not really into anything else, and just if I'm gonna choose anything to eat anytime, I'll just choose a burrito because I love burritos. Although I don't know if that's what you want to eat if you're around a table with people, because then there's going to be gas problems. But never going to turn down a burrito.
I mean, also there might be a bit of a mess with the board game pieces.
Yeah.
I think that I'm solidly down on the hey, let's just drink a glass of water, and that's what normally happens when I'm over with Chris and McCall. Now, cards or cubes?
Cards or cubes? Cards, I guess. I don't know what this is.
And do you have a local board game shop?
Yeah, there's a lot in Korea, all around. There's little places you pay a little bit and you can go. They have like a whole wall of games, and there's a Busan Board Gamers Club that I'm not a member of it, but I've seen them out and about before.
And then let's get to Rowan's question, who asks, where do you tend to get your inspiration from?
For my inspiration for stories is from traveling, getting out and meeting people, mostly getting into trouble. As you know, I've made comics about all the times that you and I got into trouble, or inspired by those times. Because before I started traveling when I was a kid, the first comic that I got published was about an orange cat who's too lazy to chase mice. So it was like my inspiration was not very wide. I read Garfield. That's what I knew. That's what I wrote about. But now I've seen the whole world, and I have a much bigger wealth of things to draw from.
I mean, you did do the student ambassador, which is presumably based a lot on your time when you were an ambassador to Australia.
Yeah, it's student ambassador is inspired by what I wish it had been, or what at that time what I wished it had been like. It was just kind of like me, like as a kid, like being disappointed by like, oh man, this is just a package tour, which was an amazing package tour, but that's what it was. And then like I just always dreamed of making that book. And I think when I finally started like building the characters and everything, you were in the room. It was in Thailand that I always wanted to make that book, and then I figured out how to do it and what the characters would be. And then we were sitting in a cabin, and I came up with the idea.
And even in PedXing, I think, which you did just after I left, like there was exact quotes from what one or both of us had said, and I mentioned that to you, and you were like, "Oh yeah, that is actually exactly what's happened with us." And you don't even realize, but for sure, traveling, it gives you so much more inspiration.
Yeah.
And it makes you a better creator. I mean, that's one difference. I mean, it's getting to the main topic of differences between comics and board games. I guess like where the inspiration comes from, because comics are much more obviously about telling that story, and board games are much more about facilitating a story in some ways.
Yeah. I think especially for me, just I mostly my board gaming experience is like with students in class. I don't really, I'm always so busy. I don't have time to go join these groups and learn a lot of other games. I play stuff like this with students in the library basement. But for a while, I was working with that studio I mentioned, Hua. We were thinking about making a banned book club board game. So I got learned a lot about that from looking at the same story in two ways and how I would adapt it. And yeah, like a book is more about showing someone a story and letting them step into it, where in a board game you want them to tell, you want the person playing to tell the story. You just give them the tools to do it, and it's them building an experience.
And could you say what project are you proudest of? I mean, I know this is the whole, ask me which of my children I like the best, but seriously, which do you like the best?
I think the best work I've done is starting to come out this year. So it would have to be either band book club or student ambassador. Band book club, I'm more proud of what we accomplished, but a lot of the work came from my wife, who it's her story. So I guess personally, what I am most proud of my input on was student ambassador, because that's just something I've tried to make for so long, and it's just pure uncut Ryan Estrada weirdness.
I think Jeroen's asking if you're scared of attracting attention by offending people, if you know what I mean.
I'm not worried about attracting attention by offending people. I mean, I would hate to to accidentally say something I don't mean and have people or not have people misunderstand me, but say something that could be interpreted as something that would offend people. But I try to only say things that I'll stand by, and I have definitely had people upset with me for saying things, but they are definitely things that, like, sorry guy, I still believe in equality and kindness, and I you get the gross people upset with you for caring about something that they should care about. So yeah, I just try to say things that if people are upset, I can stand by them.
I mean, I noticed in your arts recently, in the past few months, you've used some really strong words that I know you used to really. I don't think I've heard you use swear words in your artwork before or since. Is that just
Yeah.
because of the severity of the situation?
Yeah, I mean, like I think when we last met, like I didn't use any swear words for like the first 20 some years of my life. I don't know, it was just that I'd never started and decided not to. But then I don't know what changed. It's just some things that just I really care about, and certain words can emphasize them. I don't know what art you're talking about that I used it. I know there've maybe been a few tweets that I said some naughty words, but
Oh, I was yeah, referring to something where in Korean you write F the police.
oh yeah. Well, hey, police are causing some trouble.
I mean, it's sad that this is the way the world is, for sure. And yeah, let's I'm not sure what your question there is, Jeroen. Sorry, if you could clarify.
Drawing, the answer is yes.
Are you drawing right now?
Am I drawing right now? No, not right now. A lot of the projects I've been doing recently, I don't illustrate. I am a comic artist, but I've been working with a lot of artists to illustrate them, especially like with Band Book Club. I wanted a Korean artist to illustrate it because it's a Korean story, and Student Ambassador it turned out so much better with X are working on it. So I'm kind of focusing on writing right now.
Yeah, and Jeroen suggests that maybe just the world is getting harder, therefore we get more aggressive in retaliation.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's just that we are more aware of such things, I don't know. But it does feel like at a certain point, it's interesting how people change. But let's finish off and ask you about what is a typical day like for you.
For me, let's see. I work at one of the first things I usually do in the morning after I get up. I check my emails, answer stuff. Then I got to go to the radio station. I work at Busan FM, and I do little segments. Sometimes I do like This Week in History, or I tell travel stories. I do a show called Bad Travelers where I talk about mistakes people made while traveling. I've definitely told some stories about you on that show. Maybe tell a story about you not understanding why your mosquito net doesn't work, and then I find out you're using it as a blanket. I've definitely told that story on the show. Then I do that segment 15 minutes. I go home. I got to work on some comics or editing audio dramas.
Hey, it
then
was like 15 years ago, right? I'm
I
not
know,
proud of
I know,
everything I
I
did 15
know.
years ago.
It's a fun story. It's a fun story. But
Sure.
don't, most of the stories on that show about dumb things people did traveling are about me, so we're good. Don't worry about that. And so then I got to go to the library. These days I don't like to take buses or anything because of the coronavirus. So I ride my bike to work, which is like an hour and a half. But well, it used to be like an hour and a half, but now I found this secret way by a river where I there's this little secret tunnel that I can take, and then I go through like beautiful Totoro style farmland, and it's really beautiful bus ride. Listen to some podcasts or listen to audiobooks of something I'm adapting, get to work, teach some kids, and then uh, ride my bike home, and then work on some more comics until it's time to go to bed.
Sounds like a nice life.
It's fun.
I mean, do you feel like you're settled now?
I'm settled here right now. I've been living with my wife in Busan about 8 years, but if I started making regular, dependable income online again, which, like I said, I did when I did custom comics, but now that I'm working on things I'm passionate about, it's not exactly paying the bills, so I teach. But if I start getting dependable income, I would love to start running around the world and getting in trouble again.
I wanted to, yeah, let's answer these questions. I know that you can share this story. Has it been difficult to move to Korea?
Moving to Korea is ridiculously easy, and the people who move here are just spoiled rotten. Especially if you're coming here to like teach at a private school, they will buy you a plane. It was much easier when I first came way back in 2002. It's not as easy now, but if you can get the job and get a good job, they will buy you a plane ticket to come out here. They will buy you an apartment. The staff will like help you adjust and help you do anything you need to do. They a lot of times they'll give you a cell phone, and just we're spoiled rotten. That's not what I'm doing now. I teach at a library, but now I'm here. I have my own apartment and I'm married. We have our own life, but people here are very welcoming. It's very easy to get around. Public transportation here is amazing. Um, People are more than happy to help you get through difficulties. And yeah, I love living here, and it's especially now with everything that's going on, that as well as they take care of the health issues and the coronavirus and like tracking it and tracing it, and like there are cases in Busan, but I've gotten text messages that tell me where every single one was, what restaurants they went in, and so I know if I was ever nearby someone who had it, and just chill and nice, easy way to live.
So you're like, okay, cool. I've not been to any of those places. I'm all good. And it feels like quite a rich country per capita. And most people have smartphones, so this kind of tech is readily available.
Oh yeah, yeah. Everybody has I don't know if everybody has a smartphone, but yeah, like it's just they've made sure that it's very accessible. Everyone gets these emergency alerts all the time, and I just posted yesterday. I thought it was adorable. I had to go do another interview that was like right in a neighboring city, and the Korean government apparently have things set up so that as soon as they detected my phone was nearing a city border, they sent me a text message that said in Korean like, "Oh, you're not going to visit elderly relatives for the holidays, are you? They'll still love you even if you stay home. Be safe." It's just so cute.
Yeah. I mean, it could be argued as slightly passive aggressive, but
You know,
yeah, I guess it depends how cynically minded you are.
I thought it was sweet.
I mean, I'm kind of torn. Alan asks, can you imagine living anywhere else now? And yes, I agree, that was genius.
Hmm. Well, I've lived many places. Like I said, I spent 10 years moving to a new country every year, and I've loved all of them. Korea for me is the best place that I've lived. Busan is the best place that I've lived, just because it has the right balance of opportunities for adventure, but also amazing infrastructure. but I would love to live another place and get into trouble. You know, my life is so comfortable and nice here. I could stand it to a little difficulty and trouble and adventure.
You feel like you want to
Maybe.
shake it up and go back to your
Yeah.
roots of kind, but then you need to check in with Hyun Suk because now you're, you know, a married person and you've got to make sure.
But I love Busan, but I can't get lost anymore. It's impossible for me to get lost in Busan. I've tried. You go
Because
anywhere,
you
I'm
know
like,
it
I
too
know
well
exactly where I am. Yeah, I know everything. I know where everything is. But you know, I mean, it was really nice when I talked about finding that secret trail to my work through the Totoro style farming villages. I was like, I didn't know this existed. I'm so excited. I found something new. But now I've taken that path like 700 times, and I'm like, okay, that's it. I need something new again. But we can't travel.
Sure that everywhere has like their adventure places and their rural places, but it sounds like you know it's we kind of have this very narrow view of places that are far away. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like in the West, it's like, oh, what's Japan like? Okay, it's this exact thing. What's and that really doesn't tell the story. So
Yeah, so the small store. Let me see. It might be too dark, but I can actually show you the opposite of small stores. I live across the street from the world's largest department store. Let me see if we can see it.
the world's largest
World's largest department store is across the street. Shinsei. Oh, hi, Hyunsuk. Hyunsuk's there. Oh, it's very dark out, but let me see. I'll show you where I am. This is the view out my window.
Wow.
That right there in the back is that's the bridge that the Black Panther rode across. And right there is the world's largest department store. That dome there is a giant called Spa Land where people go and do a spa, and then there's an ice
So you
rink.
don't mean like one shopping center with little things in it. You mean one thing owned by one single person.
Oh yeah, right there, Shinsei. And
wow.
Yeah. So yeah, not little stores and not mud. And yeah, on the other side is the home of the largest film festival in Asia. Is it lit up? Oh, it's not really lit up now. You can't really see it. I think they just turned off the lights. They do light shows on it and stuff. But yeah, that's what my Korea looks like. Hi, Hyunsuk. Say hello.
Oh, hello, Hyunsuk.
All right, that was our little field trip.
I like it. Thank you very much for sharing that. And so now we've put everyone right. Alan Outson asks if wants to know about the Aki Alliance on the back, because Alan thought that they might be storyboards.
This is just pages of a comic that I did a while back called Aki Alliance. And I made these boards for when I was selling stuff at conventions, basically. And I just kind of printed them out, put them in plastic, and put Velcro on the side so I could make little standees and people could read as they were waiting in line for stuff. And then just stuck them on the wall of my studio while I work when they're not in use.
So is it the entire comic?
It's the entire. I put out one book of the first 50 pages, so it's the entire first 50 pages translated into Korean.
So like at a certain point, it's like, okay, well, here, if you want to read any more, here's the book.
Yeah. Well, I mean, originally I was going to print the whole, like in 50 page, like it's a 200-page graphic novel. I was going to do like 4 issues and translate into Korean, but I did one and just like I got too tired. I can't. I can't. I ordered way too many, and we still have like boxes and boxes of the first one. So I'm like, no, I can't fill my house with copies of this book.
That's as fair. I mean, it feels like so. As we move towards the main topic, I want to remind people to feel free to continue commenting, asking any questions, all that good stuff. And yeah, this is today's topic. So comics, board games, they are different, but sometimes, you know, they might be very much the same. For example, here, you've got a comic that's also a game. It's not a board game, but it's a game. Do you know what I mean? And so this is like a choose your own adventure. This is done by Van Ryder Games, where they were like, you know what? There's loads of choose your own adventure style books, fighting fantasy, choose your own adventure, obviously, all sorts of stuff. But we don't really have choose your own like comics. I mean, sure, there was that one with the ice cream. Do you know the one I'm talking about? It's that comic
Meanwhile,
where yeah, that was a brilliant piece of work. But here's a company that's basically doing a whole bunch of different, they call it seasons of things, and they've got like a werewolf one and like deduction ones, like superhero ones, all sorts of things. And I think the Crusoe Crew is the most recent thing that they've done, which it has a nice style to it. It harks back very much to the, do you want to do this? Turn to this page. Do you want to do this? Turn to this page. And it's all spelt out in words and numbers. Is that a game?
I think it's a form of a game. I think if we're talking about what is a game and what isn't, we can go. You were mentioning Scott McCloud earlier. He was talking about his definition of art, which is anything that is not for your basic survival is art. He talked about, like, there showed the example in the book of someone hunting. That's not art. A saber-toothed tiger starts chasing him. He runs. That's not art. The tiger falls off a cliff and he sticks his tongue out. That's art. So I think a game can be anything that that puts the onus on the person reading or viewing or experiencing to make a choice or to put themselves in the story and decide what happens next. I think that's kind of what can become a game, is whenever someone else puts in a level of control and fun. I think that's all it takes to make a game, in my opinion. I don't know if you're more into games than I am. Maybe you have a different definition.
I mean, I used to define it quite narrowly as, okay, people making choices, and then there's a measure of success. So I would not count Candyland or Snakes and Ladders as a game because you don't make choices. I would not count many role-playing games as a game because there's no measure of success. You're not actually trying to... The point of the game isn't to beat the dragon and get the treasure. That's just kind of the setup for you telling the story together. Do you know what I mean? And so that's kind of blurring the line. I know that recently I like what Mark Rosewater says. So this is the head designer of Magic the Gathering, who basically postulates that if you feel like you've got control, then it's a game. So what Mark Rosewater is saying is that for a small child who believes that drawing the cards in Candyland, they've got some control over it, or that rolling the die in Snakes and Ladders, you have some control over it, then for you, it is a game. And so game is subjective in the eye of the beholder, which I quite like, because that is a game for this person, but not for that person. And then the second thing is like that whole measure of success. I'm not sure I believe that role-playing games and story games, as all these things mesh together, it should be more like, okay, yeah, sure, there could be a measure of success, but maybe there's just some opportunity to either measure your success or have some performance going on. So you could, by that virtue, say that improv theatre is a game, that improv jazz is a game, because it's got a set of rules that you agree to. And I think that's a key part of a game, that you agree to those sets of rules. Like if I were reading, Loup Garou by these people, if I bring it up, which is And then I said, okay, you know what? I'm going to just read all the panels in order. I'm not going to follow the instructions to go to a particular number or whatever. Then, sure, I'm no longer engaging in that game because there's this game, and then we've got to have willingly agreed to that set of rules, like the same token that. And so I think that's the biggest thing about game, is it's like an arbitrary set of rules that you agree to just for this moment, and that it doesn't have a bearing, that there is a separation between this and the real world. And I think it's the magic circle that defines games a lot more than the measure of success.
Yeah, I like experimentation personally, and I think that the less rules you have, that if someone thinks they're making a game and they do something weird and they make a thing that maybe you wouldn't consider a game, but they do, they've put something new in the world, and I'm glad that it exists. So I think people should be able to make their own definition of what a game could be, or what a comic could be, or what a movie could be, and just do weird stuff and play around. That's what I think.
100%. I want to share some comics that I read on the internet today. All of them come from Nancy. I've never read Nancy before, but I don't know if you're familiar with this.
Oh, the new Nancy. Oh, yeah.
So let me... So I just want to talk about this. Okay, so this is a fairly normal comic, but here's something where, okay, Slugger, and...
Sluggo.
Pardon?
Sluggo,
thank you very much. You know, there's some narrative, there's the words, and then the words leads into the pictures, and there's no way that you could do this with words alone or pictures alone, and this to me just defines what a comic is. This is like a fairly standard comic doing something that only comics could do. Would you agree?
Yeah.
By the way, yeah, we've got people in the comments saying that these sorts of choose your own things might be, or story games might be narrative games where it's more performance based rather than measure of success. And
well, and I'll add that you said there's not a lot of people making comics like that, and I can speak to why that is the case, because I for a long time I was working on a choose your own adventure comic, and the idea was it was supposed to teach people how to speak Korean, where you would have to learn the language as you played and like answer questions that would take you to solve a mystery. And the reason I stopped doing it is because when you work on something choose your own adventure like that, anything else you work on, every day you work, you get closer to the finish line. But when you work on choose your own adventure things, the more you work, the further away the ending gets, because
I mean,
this is another branch
with branching narratives,
yeah.
because either you've got to collapse them or you've got to have a lot of dead ends and sudden deaths, which is really horrible. I mean, we both read To Be or Not to Be, That's the Adventure by Ryan North.
Oh yeah, that's a great book.
And let me kind of bring that up. And yeah, that is something where it feels super epic, and there's so much going on in that book, and it doesn't feel like it's arbitrarily collapsing you, whereas I think too, maybe words are easier to write than the same quality of expression via pictures. I don't know if that's maybe that's a bit harsh to say, but going back to Nancy, like, look at this second comic. So yeah, forcing puzzle pieces together when they don't fit. If you mess it up in one place, it will cause problems somewhere else. It will barely change anything. Nancy, all right. And then, of course, if you look at the puzzle pieces and words are not quite fitting, it does exactly change the thing, which I just thought was brilliant, using the jigsaw puzzle lines as a new way to give information. Had you seen this one before?
Oh yeah. I read Nancy now.
And the final one, this one was basically the one that I just saw this morning, and I was like, oh, wait a minute, this is brilliant. So this is the Sunday thing. Let me take off the banner at the bottom. And so I just want to comment on like the artistry here. So Nancy and the aunt, sorry, what's the name of the aunt again?
Aunt Fritzy. Fritzy, I think, yeah.
But like they're having a conversation about dissecting, murder mysteries like on TV. And then you read it and it's like, okay, what's going on there? And then I read it, so I was like, whoa, wait a minute, what's going on there? And then you start to look in the background where, hey, wait a minute, in the third panel, there's a little face. Hey, wait a minute, there was this bag of chips that was going on. And then you start to unravel the mystery as you see how every single panel relates in the background to what's being said. It's just really masterful. And so, Nancy, I think I'm being really impressed this morning.
Yeah, go back and read from the beginning. I think she just started. She took it over like a year ago or something like that. But Nancy got amazing.
And so, this is like, wow. This was not even on my radar or anything. But I think the thing about board games and the thing about comic books, like they both do things that can only be done within that medium. Like comics, like things like those jigsaw lines, or the way that Watterson, Bill Watterson, like the way that they used like the paneling, if you know what I mean, like when they were given the freedom with the Sunday stuff. And sorry, I'm aware that I'm talking. I should let you talk more because I'm having gone as a guest. But yeah, like board games, they can do so much cool stuff that you could only do via board games, and that's what I'm really missing these days. It's the tactile nature of stacking blocks on top of blocks. It's the joy of throwing a thing, or performative artwork as you get your friends to mime something, or to act, or to contort their bodies, or to even putting pieces down. And we've got lots of connections with Comic-Con. Do you think that is why we've got mixed? Do you think the similarities are why Comic-Con and PAX? Well, PAX isn't really about comics, is it?
Yeah, based on a comic strip, but yeah.
That's a good point. Yeah, it's all started off with Penny Arcade, the comic strip, and now like it's going into this behemoth that so many people go there that probably don't read the comic at all. And do you think that comics and board games share the same universe?
I think it shares an interest in people that want a story to be told, that want to like escape into another world. Whether like we said, there's two different ways to do that. You can either be told what happened, or you can be given the tools to create your own world yourself, and it's all part of the same thing. It's just different ways of telling or creating a story. I wanted to add before we move on from this, we were talking before about whether this is a book or a game, and I remembered that there actually is one of the storylines is where you play a game of chess, and you actually have to decide where you move what piece, and then choose the page based on that. So there actually is playing board games within the book.
I mean, I think what I did not refute that it was a game. To my mind, it's 100% a game. What I said was that I don't know if it's a comic.
Yeah, it's definitely not a comic, but I'm just saying,
all I was saying.
It's made by cartoonists to tell a story.
Yeah, and there's definitely Bjorn says at Essen. I don't know if you're familiar with Essen Spiel, Ryan.
No.
So basically, the biggest board game conventions in the world are probably Essen in Germany, which is quite international. You've got people coming from America, Asia, obviously Europe, and don't think there's that many people from Australia. But anyway, then Gen Con, which is pretty much US-centric, and But there's obviously people who want to go there. But Essen is the big international one, really. Anyway, so he owns saying that there were a lot of comics or cartoons. Although, to be fair, at Essen, you also get things that are just on the periphery. Like, you also get mead. A lot of mead, fermented honey, because people who like board games might also like mead.
Yeah.
Or sometimes you just get little models and stuff. But it's board games for 90% of it, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think there's a lot of... Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Do you think there's a lot of crossover in audience?
I do. And I think that it's like the things you were talking about with that Nancy's doing that are creating weird things with the narrative and the way it's played out. Like you, again, back to Scott McCloud, he talked about how something comics does is ask the reader to fill in the blanks. Like what the reader has to decide what happened in that little white strip between the gutter. Like we go from here to here. The reader has to picture the character walking from there, what they did in between. The reader, even examples like that where a puzzle piece, like it's the comic is one thing the first time you read it, and then when you get more information, you go and you put something of yourself into it. So comics is trying to different levels of it, where whether it's just you're trying to tell a straight story or whether you want the audience to put something of themselves in it. But games is just another way of doing that.
And you're right. Basically, you could argue that this is a game. I mean, if you feel like I guess this gets into the difference between puzzle and game, but it's certainly asking a lot of you. It's definitely interacting, not only to fill in the white space, but here to work out, okay, what happens if you swap those puzzle pieces around?
Mm-hmm.
And Alan Outzen points out that you've got... Yeah, I remember actually a recent thing that I went to. When I say recent, I mean since I moved to London 8 years ago. I've been there several times. But it's half about anime, it's a bit about video games, and there's a bit of board game stuff there. But yeah, there's so much fun cosplay there, and that's a thing that you also see, obviously, in the video game world, but it's increasingly in the board game world as well. That people are starting to say, oh yeah, we are having recognizable characters that we can dress up as. Do you... Yeah, sure, maybe not so much at Essen, but quite a bit at UK Games Expo that I've seen. Like people dressing up as Vikings and having recreations, and they've got like an actual cosplay award at UK Games Expo. I mean, do you think you need to have strong characters for both of these things?
I think that there's different types of ways you can tell a story. Like that, within comics, there's things that there's comics where there's a set of characters, there's a continuing story, or there's like gag. The Far Side never had the same character twice, really. It's about whatever it takes to get that idea across. And with board games, like I said, just the example of these two versions of the same game, the traditional version is literally just a square drawn on. People usually would draw it in the dirt and throw little rocks like that. That's creating an experience, but you can take the same game and add the traditional Korean gods and monsters and fox people and then add an additional layer of experience onto it that makes people feel like they followed a story. Both of them are valid, and both of them create different experiences. But yeah, I really like even when I'm making comics, I do like to find ways for people to put their stamp on it and experience it in their own way. Like one of my favorite things is like that Nancy comic is an example where you get information, you go back, you can read it again, and that's a very simple one with like 3 panels. But one thing I remember blowing my mind as a kid, like where do you stand on like the Where's Waldo books? That's a game, right?
Yeah, I mean, For sure, because I mean, there's some sorts of performance from you.
Mhm.
You feel like you've got some sorts of control, at least of where your eyes are looking.
Mhm.
I mean, that if you want to be technical, people have said it might be a puzzle because they define games as puzzles,
Mhm.
contests. For me, it's like all a blurry line. And but sure, and for the record, we call it "Where's Wally" in
Yeah.
Europe. But yeah, you're searching for it, and then if you find the thing, then great. And if you
Mhm.
manage to find the Wally, then you go to the end and it says, hey, by the way, here's some extra things that you can find if you really want. And that's
Yeah.
like higher difficulty levels.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember that blowing my mind as a kid when it's like, didn't you realize he's dropped something on every page? And I'm like, he did drop something on every page. He doesn't have all his scuba gear and stuff anymore. And then you go back and read it. I the
Wow.
the new book that I did, I tried to do something like that. The student ambassador book. It part of the mystery.
Spoilers.
Part of the mystery that they do is the kids have to learn to read Korean because in order to solve the mystery. And then at the end of the book, after the kids have read it all, I explain that every single sign in the background of the book is in Korean the name of another kid's book. So then they can read the whole book again and like play a game of like see what ones they recognize, and because that's like they've just felt the experience of these kids, or they've heard the story of these kids going around and reading Korean to solve a mystery. And now I'm like, here's your chance. You can go back in their world and solve your own mystery by reading Korean. You didn't realize it. I've already given you all the tools you need. And so like I like trying to put something like that in a book that it's, I make it both. Here's my story. Here's an experience you can have with the tools that I gave you in that story.
That is pretty awesome. And yeah, whether we define a puzzle as a game or not, I really agree with what you said at the start that when we're creating, sometimes it's enough to just create cool things. And for sure, there are people who look at the mind. I don't know if you're familiar with the mind. Um, so this is a game by Wolfgang Warsch, I want to say, where basically it's all about how long you take to put down a card.
Mhm.
And some people are saying, well, that's not a game. You're just waiting. You're not allowed to talk. You're not allowed to make strategic decisions. It's when you put down a card, it's random. But like you see people, they get to know each other. They get to say, okay, well, this person's going to wait about this long. If it's this much of a gap, okay, this is what their body's going to look like. Starts reading each other. Do you know what I mean? And you're not meant to start playing charades. That's not the spirit of the game. But it's like, you know, those subtle things about timing, about body language, without being super obvious about it. And I think the point is that we can say this is a comic, and okay, the Aztec stuff is a comic, and okay, is a one panel comic a comic, or does it need to be two panels? I mean, fundamentally, um, sure, there's a lot of blurry edges, and maybe that's part of what makes it also marvelous.
Mhm. That's where interesting things happen in those little spaces between. Like for example, like just talking about art, like in the modern art world, there's all those weird things that like the guy that taped a banana to the wall. Did you see that whole thing?
No, I didn't.
It was just there's this big art festival like at the beginning of the year, and one of the pieces was just a guy taped a banana to a wall and put a price tag that said it was like $1 million or something like that, and it was like a piss take about art, but that's art because it created an impact on so many people. It was talked about all over the world, and it made people debate about what is art and what isn't. And then someone bought the art, and then another artist came and ate the banana and said that was my performance art. I ate that banana, and that's art also because it does everything art does. It captured interest. It created a story. It created questions. It made people build their own answers. Those are things that you would people that are serious and trying to make art might might not like and not want to consider art, but that's what it is, and it made a very interesting piece of art that many people around the world enjoyed. So I'm sure there's games you can create that sound like you're just mocking the very idea of games, but in doing so, it creates an experience, an interactive experience for a person that makes them think in a way they wouldn't think, and that, I think that's a cool game.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. Hohen says, I don't know how you can put a price tag on it, but maybe that in itself is part of the performance arts aspect of that piece. And yeah, for sure. You look at, yeah, it's a crazy world, and like you say, the most interesting things happen in the margins. Now, let's move on to check in with what questions we asked at the start. Why might we choose to engage in one medium over the other? And why have you chosen to engage in comics more than board games? Why have I chosen to express myself a bit more through games? I mean, it doesn't mean that one's better than the other, but this kind of brings us to the differences, I guess, and preferences.
I think it's just about the medium that's best for telling the story that you want to tell and creating the experience that you want to create. I've worked in videos and comics and prose and many different media, radio drama, things like that. And it just, some things feel like that's the better medium to create this experience or tell the story. And I have ideas that are more game-like that I'd love to do, but just I haven't had the resources to make those yet. In a comic, if I want to make a comic, I can just make a comic, but without having to worry about manufacturing. If I can make comic, put it on the internet, and be done. If I design a game, I have to figure out like how to source boxes and how to. I can't do all that.
In theory, you could do a print and play where you put the files up and then you ask other people to print it out.
Yeah.
But that's an obstacle generally to them playing it. Where I went onto the internet this morning, I basically saw one of the Nancy comics on Twitter, and then I followed it up, and then I read, maybe a few weeks worth. I was like, wow, this is really good. And then carried on with my day, got my shower and everything. Whereas if it was a print and play game, you can't do that unless it's a digital game in order to make it physical. And maybe that's the thing, like a digital comic is actually far closer to a physical comic than a digital board game is to a physical board game, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, because there's work in between seeing it online and playing it, or as opposed to comic, you look at it, you're done.
Like if you want to play a board game on Board Game Arena where the manner of your interaction, if I play Can't Stop on Board Game Arena, or if I play Ponte del Diablo on Board Game Arena, an abstract game about bridges and connecting them up and stuff, then I don't get the putting them down. I don't get the same ability to look around it that I get with the physical thing. Whereas with a comic, it's there on the screen on its entirety. It's still represented in a 2D plane. And unless the page is going to be bigger than my laptop screen, then there's not a massive difference. Sure, you've got the turning of the page, and I far prefer reading comics in actual paper form in books. And but it's closer, I would say, on a screen.
Yeah, and it's I mean the some of the things that I want to do just wouldn't particularly work for that type of game. If I had an idea that worked for that, I would love to make something like that. But the ideas I have are very big and grand. Like one of my dream projects is I would love to make a one-page graphic novel that by playing a game you figure out what to, or like it would be like you have to unfold it and it'd be like this giant piece of paper that like would show an entire city, and you'd start here and then follow the page, but then like the characters would be solving a mystery, and by something they said or something in the panel, you'd figure out a clue and then go to that part of the page and read what happened next. And maybe there's like a puzzle you have to solve on the page to figure out. And maybe you got to play with like a little magnifying glass or one of those little like screens that you put over so you can read something that you can't read without it. And for me, that would be like you'd have to get someone to print these giant super poster size things and fold them up. That to me would be a blast that people wouldn't really have the ability to print on the home printer, because the whole point, it would be the size of a room. But yeah, I mean, I think that between you and I, just remembering our conversations about projects back when we were in Thailand, like you were focused on creating the experience for others, and I was focused on story. Because I remember you were planning, was it called Skiers, the game you were planning
Oh
then?
yeah.
And I remember you kept like brainstorming ideas, and all my ideas were, I was obsessed with, you would have a main character who there would be a break between each level, or he was obsessed with playing ski. It would just start off with, I want to play Skiers, and then the next one it would be like, I forget how it went, but like you slowly realized that his life was crumbling because that's all he cared about, and then he was like on death row, and then like, how do you plead? And you go, I want to play Skiers, and then you just do level. And I was upset, like, you have to do this. This is how it goes. But like, you're like, it's not a story, it's a game. We just want to make a game.
And that's the thing. It's like, I think I ended up doing like a quick thing of this, and at some point for something, and yeah, like cutscenes in games, it's all meshing them together. It for sure brings that story and interactivity together, but quite often they clash, and you want to get potentially back to the interactivity. Sure, there's stuff like Mass Effects, like big video games in budgets of millions of dollars, where you play it because it's okay, branching narrative, and they've got the budget to kind of have so many thousands of hours that each person going through is going to basically see like 15% of the world, which is ridiculous if you think about it. Because even if in a comic, maybe I don't appreciate every single line, maybe I don't notice even every single sound effect written in the background or shop name, but I do at least see everything. And when you consider the number of games like Red Dead Redemption, the amount of content in a video game like that, but even in a board game like Arkham Horror has so many hundreds of cards, and the idea is that the game does need to change every time you play it, that having this variable setup, having like hundreds of cards when you maybe only use 20 of them each time you play, is a way of making that game massively different. Whereas coming back to a comic is like an old friend almost, and then you become more and more familiar with it, not just the different parts of it, but like, okay, I know the story I'm getting. And yeah, hi Alex, it's lovely to see you. And Jeroen and Alan are both excited about your giant page thing. So you've got at least 2 people.
All right. That would take a lot of work and a lot of money from a publisher willing to print that thing, but I would love to make it.
I mean, I agree with Alex here, but it's not just about your perspective being different. Like, you know, what you mentioned with Student Ambassador, that's super cool. But it's also about the actual experience itself being different. Like, no 2 games of Go are going to progress in the same way, realistically. Johan asks, could you create a comic that's for multiple people?
I don't know what that means. All comics are for many people.
I think Johan's saying a comic that needs to be read by 2 people at once.
A comic that needs to be read by 2 people at once. I suppose that'd be an interesting experiment to have if like you were a comic about a phone conversation between two people, and you see there's two different books where it has it from a different perspective, and each person knows a different part of it, would be interesting. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I know that going back to Van Ryder games with their Crusoe crew, that's meant to be read by multiple people, and that's very much borders the line of comic and not and game. And yeah, I guess let's get into the creation aspect. This seems like a good point because so obviously there's compilations like Flight, which you were part of. There's other things where a bunch of people each submit their own story, short story. Pardon? Anthologies.
Anthologies.
But are there comics or graphic novels a single story where multiple artists work together?
Yeah, I did one called Broken Telephone. That was a graphic novel that I put together where I wrote all of the stories, and then I had each chapter illustrated by different artists because it was all about different perspectives. Each chapter in it starred the villain of the story before it, but they think they're the hero. So the whole idea is everyone's a hero of their own story. So I wanted different artists to draw every chapter, and that kind of was one of those books where I wanted every time you read it to be a different experience, because you're seeing every chapter through a different perspective, and then after you learn all the perspectives, like it colors what the people did at the beginning very differently. Even though they think they're the hero, you realize something horrible that happened because of it. And so you can, it's kind of this, I created the book to be like a loop that you could just keep reading and keep feeling different things about it. And kind of the working with all those artists kind of helped me create that effect.
And yeah, what you did there, yeah, it worked really well with the whole shift in perspective and with the arts actually reflecting the story and not just being done for the sake of it, but yeah, actually sort of working through to say something a bit more, if you know what I mean. When it comes to the creation, do you think that in board games, do you think there's generally more people involved, that there needs to be more people involved? Do you think that, like with a graphic novel, I could, like I did, technically draw a 100-page thing that used to be available on the internet, and even though I said at the time, no one will ever be able to read out, I'll only show it to people doing the $1 which went to the tsunami fund. Like at this point, like I feel like I should be allowed to just put that on the internet. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think anybody's going to be too upset with you.
But yeah, I mean, it was just a freaking dollar. It's literally $1. But anyway, that 100-page thing, if I do get it off my old computer, I wrote it, I painted it, and then I put it up on the internet myself, and then people could engage with it, and it felt like I'd achieved something, like it was a enjoyable enough comic. Even though obviously I've progressed as a person, I'd like to think, in the past 15 years. So maybe nowadays my storytelling might be a little bit better, I don't know. But do you think that with a board game, because you've got this notion of playtesting that's so important, because you never know how games are going to react. It's like that whole thing of no plan survives contacts with the real world. And do you think there's any analog in comics? Yes, you've got copy editing, but do you feel like you need to have other people involved in the comic?
I don't think you need to. It can improve a comic if you show it to other people. Like especially if you're doing like when I was doing band book club, it was especially important for me to show it to a lot of people because even though my co-writer was the person that it happened to, I'm still a non-Korean writer who is tackling a lot of the writing for a story that's very Korean. So just showing it to a lot of people, letting them read it and asking their opinions helped out. Just number one in them giving suggestions of ways to make it more accurate, but then also just like uh, speaking to people, like we had people from that were around at that time and people that are activists now that were looking at it. And like one of the biggest bits of feedback that we got was about, and one of the things about in the book is about how the police back then were very brutal and tortured people, but now they're like they've rebranded to be nice and sweet and innocent. And one of the people was like, "Yeah, but there's still issues with the police. Don't make it sound like there's not." And so that was very important to put in. And even beyond just feedback like that, like with all the adventure comics that I do, I do the equivalent of playtesting those a lot because uh, I always tell those stories on stage before I make them into a comic. I'll go to like open mics, comedy open mics, storytelling open mics, and tell that story to different crowds and see what makes people laugh. And obviously, it's a true story. I'm not like changing the story, but I'll change like the way I say something, the way I time something, the parts of the story I focus on. I'll realize this character is not important. I don't need them in there. Or even one of the biggest bits of one of the biggest things I got from something like that is where I realized while I was telling the story on stage that I was the bad guy of the story. And that's what made it interesting. Like I've been trying, like I couldn't crack how to make the story interesting because I was trying to explain why I was right. And then as soon as I said something dismissive about my own opinion, everyone started laughing hysterically. And I realized, wait a minute, I was wrong, and that's what makes it interesting. So that's like every one of the comics you see on my site that's like that, I would have told like 10 times on stage in front of different audiences with different expectations. And it's very different to tell a story at a comedy show where there's the expectation of setup, punchline, or like at a poetry show where you're coming on after someone's like very serious story about trauma, and then you have a silly story about falling asleep in your own excrement on Kilimanjaro. Like you see what other people bring to the story based on the context and their own expectations and personality. And then when I sit down to put it on paper, I can think about what is the audience bringing to this? If I draw this, what does that do? And then that form of playtesting helps me make the comic that I want to make.
Yeah. Sorry about this. Got a wee bits of a chesty cloth. It's almost certainly not coronavirus. Because there's still other viri. Hello, Xates. It's lovely to have you with us. And Alan, who asks how that works, I'm assuming it's purely based on the audience's reactions, because that's the thing when you do stand up, whether you're a musician or telling a story, and you're talking about telling it verbally with people, and you get the instant reaction of people, you see the emotions on their faces, you hear when people...
when they lean forward, when they look at their phone, like, okay, a lot of people on their phones, that part didn't work. Or when you just hear people laughing, then you're like, oh, that I touched something there. I didn't even realize that was the funny part. I thought that was a sad part. Like there was a bit that I do my wife and I will perform as like a little 7-minute play on stage that's inspired by a film festival that I went to where the translator like had a breakdown and no one knew that he stopped translating what they were saying and started talking about his own life, and there were two different Q&As happening at the same time. Me and one of the guys were the only people that knew it. So I wrote a play of it and I performed it, and I thought it was a tragedy until I got on stage and the audience was like falling out of their chairs laughing, and I'm like, oh, I guess it's a comedy. All right. And I started performing as a comedy, didn't change a single word. So it's just you look at the audience and see how they react.
And presumably the tone of it is going to reflect in the tone of the drawing style and everything like that.
You cut out for like 10 seconds.
Oh,
Now we're back.
I was just saying that the tone of whether you're telling a comedy or a tragedy is going to reflect itself in the drawing style that you use.
Yeah. And often the way to make something funnier is to just treat it more seriously and treat it the way you would if it were not a comedy, and then let the inherent humor of it come out, as opposed to like trying to ram it down people's throats to laugh at this.
So, yeah, Xate empathizes and saying that they often make people laugh even when they're sharing horrible, horrible stories. I mean, maybe there's just a streak of Schadenfreude in everyone. So, I wanted to touch very briefly upon, yes, you've got games, there's a lot of deck builders. If you're board games based on comics, there's something based on the Machine of Death, although that's a book rather than a comic. You've got Comic Turns, which is a game, but it's done by a comic artist. And everything here, sorry, that's the rules cards, is done, there's comic style art. And as part of this game, you're literally making a comic. Mm-hmm. There's also a game where you are actually physically drawing a comic as part of the game, where don't know if you've heard of this one, where each turn they give you some prompts, and then if you put it into your comic, you score bonus points, and the time pressure goes up and up, and the time limit goes down and down, and the number of panels go up, and it's meant to reflect, a crazy overworked manga artist in Japan.
Okay, I haven't seen that one. I know of Cyanide and Happiness put out a game called Joking Hazard. That's the same thing. They give you panels and you try and make a game out of it. And then there's Scott McCloud talked about a lot about playing, I think it was called 5-Card Nancy, where he would just cut out panels from Nancy comics and try and there's a game of making it make sense, which might be fun to try with the new Nancy.
And maybe even Cyanide and Happiness, they had the random comic generator before they brought out their board game, didn't they?
Yeah, which is kind of a way to play test that.
We can talk about, obviously, building fame in one aspect and moving to the other ones, like in the case of Exploding Kittens, where the oatmeal builds fame, and a big following. With all these crossovers, do you think what comic, and you're allowed to include your own, let's hear top 3, although you're allowed to change your mind tomorrow, what top 3 comics would you like to see as a board game?
Well, let's see. I mean, when you're talking about adaptations of a comic to a board game, I think there's 2 ways that could go about. A lot of board games based on stuff would be a licensed products are often not the best products. When you talk about licensed game, even licensed comics based on a TV show or a movie, where it's some business person has been this looks popular, let's make something based on this, and it's not necessarily made because someone wants to continue a story, but they have to figure out a way to just kind of put stickers of a character people like on something to sell it. An example of that moving to games is how traditionally it was very famous that video games based on movies were always terrible, and that's because the company would get the license 6 months before the movie came out. You have to make something that fits this, go. But now all the superhero studios have said we're not doing that anymore, it's bad, we're not tying our games to movies anymore, we're just going to let people make movies based on our characters and make it a separate thing, and that's made games a lot better. So that's what I would like to see more of, is something that is not tied to just let's recreate this thing, but maybe here's a world that you can put a story in. As I mentioned, I would love to make the Banned Book Club board game, just because basically we were going to like reskin this game and then change a lot of the rules to make it where it was going to be where you were smuggling banned books through a protest and trying not to get caught by the police. So so that's a way that I would be telling a new story in that world that kind of lets people feel what it's like for those characters, where danger is around every corner and you can get thrown in prison just for having a book. That to me would be a cool game, and I feel weird saying my own, but I totally would like to play that game, even if I didn't make it or make any money off of it. Let me see, what other things what I think would make an interesting game. Bone is just such an interesting world with so many interesting characters that you would have to, like, Jeff Smith would have to make the game, like, because he loves that world so much. If you just let a company like make a branded Bone game, there's a real chance it would be hot garbage. But if Jeff Smith had an idea to tell a story in that world, I would love to play that game. And then I don't know what else would make a really good one. I don't know. You got a pick for a comic you'd like to see as a game?
I mean, I'm a big fan of Usagi Yojimbo,
Mm-hmm.
although I'm a bit behind with that. But yeah, I don't know what kind of game it would be. Maybe it would. I know they did an RPG based on it, and there was like a really old video game, which was not meant to be that great. But I think part of the joy is if you've got something like this. I know Jay Cormier did Mind Management because they actually really loved that, and it was all basically it's about creator-owned IPs, so like comics where it's still owned by the person who made it, as opposed to Marvel or whatever, where it's a corporation. And sure, you've got Marvel Codenames and Marvel Legendary, but sure, Marvel Codenames, it's Codenames, so it's good, and it's Marvel, so you might like it if you like Marvel, but it doesn't feel like it's bringing anything new to it. I mean, the ideal situation, it feels like you want to not just be playing this other game with the trappings of this thing you love, or have a quiz game based on this thing you love, which is the really cheap way to do it, but you want to either have a game that could exist in that world, or a game that feels like it's part of that world, even if it's, as you say, not necessarily something that's reflected on the pages.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly what game Usagi Yojimbo would be. Maybe, I mean, I know they play a lot of betting games because that's part of the culture of that time. Mm-hmm. And so maybe there could be some sort of thing of, maybe it could be like a game like Tokaido, where Tokaido is a existing board game where you're going along feudal Japan and just having a nice journey. And maybe there's something like that where you're all, although then maybe everyone really wants to play as Usagi. And yeah, that's the problem when you've got one main character, isn't it? Yeah. Who does everyone else play? Is it just a solitaire game?
Yeah, I like the idea of taking like elements of traditional games from the culture that story comes from. That maybe there's some Japanese games, because like one of the main reasons I would want to do Banned Book Club game is just because I like the idea of using the traditional Korean yute and the board printed on hanbok silk, because it kind of puts you in that world. Just like for me, playing Baekdo, just holding the 4 dice and rolling it like the yute, it just puts me in the world, because it's not dice like you'd play a normal game. It's the same way of playing the game that those characters would have played long ago. And so that maybe there's something in Japanese culture that you could take and use those elements to tell a story.
I mean, for sure, there's so many things. Speaking of not touching puppies, having this tactile elements and having this thing that you touch, and the difference between standard cards and linen finish cards, it makes such a big difference. And I think this is parts of why people still buy books, why I would, even if I can read an entire webcomic, I'm still maybe going to, if I love it enough, buy it. Why maybe even if I can read all the text online, I'm still going to check it out. Why we want to engage with the things and move them with our fingers. And maybe that's something that connects at least print comics with board games. I think it feels like an appropriate time to wrap up. So we've answered the question of how they compare. Why might we choose to engage in one medium over the other? It's just like comes down to preferences. It comes down to limited time, and it sounds like both of us would love to engage in both of them if we had the time. Oh, we didn't really get into what were the changes deemed necessary. Like, for sure, there's a lot of abstraction. If you look at Marvel Legendary, there's and it casts you in a weird role, some of these games, because in some of these games, people say, yeah, you're not really playing as the character, you're playing as someone making the comic, which obviously is a lot more clear in what Cyanide and Happiness is one? Comic Turn? No.
Joking Hazard?
Thank you very much. Joking Hazard, where you are physically making the comic, but in a deck building game where, okay, your deck, this is what happens, this is what abilities your person has to do, and they say, yeah, this doesn't make sense if you think that you are that character, but if you think you are the person writing that story, then it makes a little bit more sense. It feels like there's always going to be a bit more abstraction with board games and a little bit, yeah, more weirdness to it. Feels like the form dictates a bit more.
Yeah, with a board game, you're putting a lot into the hands of the player, and so especially if you want the main character of the game to be your main character, that's going to be very difficult to pull off because the player is going to do things that character wouldn't do, or that and you can't give a lot of like narrative and tell a story about what because that's on them. So you need to just create a world and then let them do it. And like you kind of have to be a lot more hands off on what happens, which is difficult for me because I love making up what happens.
I mean, we've talked a little bit about similarities and differences. I mean, you can have board games that are essentially made by one person. I mean, In a Bind, which I did the rules and the art for, and that's a very personal thing. I mean, sure, I want to say now it's better known as Yogi, and, you know, they did a good job with it, that it's in a metal tin and it's got waterproof cards and someone else's art that looks good. But the original version is the one that's, hey, this was all me, if you know what I mean. And it feels like you can maintain that personal nature in a board game. Do you feel like one is inherently more personal to the creator than the other?
I think what's personal to a creator is it just depends on what they put their passion in. They can put your passion in either one. I know you can definitely make a comic that you're not passionate about, because years of doing custom comics sure taught me that. But I can also put a comic that I pour my heart and soul in and care deeply about, and I think it's the same with a game. I was just watching a video about not board games but video games, about asset flippers that do like really low effort, like just buy assets and put them as quickly as possible just to churn out games and make money. And I'm sure you can do the same with board games. Just make a very simple equivalent of Candyland or something, but with stock images, and you can make a game that you're not passionate about it, but you can also pour everything you have and make something personal and meaningful that you do all yourself. It's about the artist.
Alan asks if you could have a comic based off a board game. And I know that Pokemon was a video game first, and then you had the card game and like the anime and comic. I don't know exactly what point it came out in Japan, but for sure the English language comic came after the card game. And I know that in Yu-Gi-Oh! They were both developed simultaneously. The whole point was always going to be that there's this card game and this comic.
Well, I mean, you can definitely make board game movies. They've proven that. They haven't proven you can make a good one, but they've proven you can do it. What they've done Battleship. What were the other ones that they did? They did like
Clue.
Clue, yeah, Clue definitely. But there were a couple right around the same time.
Clue is actually one of those like so bad that you watch it for the comedy.
Mm-hmm.
Clue is actually funny. The thing is, it is done for laughs, and I think they knew, okay, this is completely ridiculous. Let's lean into that, and I appreciate that about the Clue movie.
Mm-hmm.
I can't think of any films, but other than these two licenses, I can't think of any board games that have been turned into comics, other than if you count webcomics, obviously. Which, yeah, why wouldn't you? You've got up to 4 players. You've got semi co-op, but then in terms of printed stuff, I can't think of anything else. I don't know if you can.
Not that I recall. I'm sure there's like Candyland comics out there somewhere or something. I'm sure they've made some Clue comics.
Oh, there's that Jack Chick. You know, the person I'm talking about, who used to talk about the evils of everything.
Yeah.
And he made comics about Dungeons and Dragons.
Mm-hmm.
Like how Dungeons and Dragons was going to turn you towards Satan and stuff.
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah.
He's the most successful indie cartoonist in history.
By what measure?
By measure of units sold. Because he sells them.
Given away.
Yeah, but they're given away by people who buy them from him to give away.
Okay.
They buy boxes and then like leave them on buses. So he's making the money. Because you don't just sell one to somebody, you sell a crate to somebody, and then they leave them everywhere.
Wow, that is ridiculous. Yeah, it's definitely feels like something that we could go on about. Thank you so much, Ryan, for coming on. Let's wrap up. We've talked about so much. We talked about Copy EP, challenge comics, cardboard. Yeah, the importance of characters, the amazingness of Nancy, and then all your things. And yeah, can you just, as we wrap up, tell us where you would like to be found, maybe, and also tell us a little bit about, well, do you have anything to say before we get to that? Do you have anything more to say as we wrap up?
About games, I think we covered everything. I just yeah, you have my social media down there, but I think the best place to check me out is ryanestrada.com, because that has everything. I need to update it soon with some of the new projects, but tons of free stuff you can read there, and then places you can find my other stuff. I really hope people check out Student Ambassador: The Missing Dragon. That's the one I mentioned, where you can play a game and learn to read Korean, and then find hidden book Easter eggs in there. And that's my big fun one now. Fan Book Club is out. That's where you can find me. You can all find it all on that site.
Yeah, and there's a stupendous amount of stuff for sure to check out. And so if you are on Facebook or YouTube, you can see that in the comments. If you're on Twitch, then I'm just going to post that in here. Alan Oughton says that you've just facilitated Alan's favorite episode, and Alan's basically watched over 140 of these.
Nice.
I'm sorry, Xate. I can't promise to be less interesting one day. That's just not how I can operate. try to make it as interesting as possible every day.
We could have made it more. We could have told more co-PP stories. We got tons of. Oh man, I've spent a lot of radio time telling stories about us in co-PP.
What story do you have of almost dying? Do you want to talk about a typhoon?
Talk about typhoon. I've already told. Can I tell the story about you driving a motorbike?
Yeah, sure.
So I forget where there was this place. There was this cave that Bez and I wanted to go see, and so I rented a motorbike, and we're just zipping around. We stopped at this little cool temple and saw some stuff, and then Bez goes, "Do you mind if I ride the motorbike or drive the motorbike a little bit?" And I'm like, "Do you know how to drive a motorbike?" And Bez is like, "No, but I'll figure it out." I'm like, "Well, you can't do it while I'm sitting on it because you were sitting on the back." I'm like, "You can maybe ride it yourself a little bit if you want, like around the parking lot." And you go, "Well, show me how to." So I showed you, like, okay, here's the gas, here's the brake, here, everything. This is what you do.
That's the thing. I don't think you showed me the brake.
Okay. Yeah, I guess I didn't show you the brake. So you were just like, let me give it a shot. And you just gun it and disappear. You didn't go through the parking lot. You went out to, like, there's this like driveway to go out where there's two barriers that, like, these planters with trees in them. You just zipped through there, turned like 90 degrees right, and just disappeared through the mountains. And I'm like, okay. We didn't have phones or anything. So I'm just like, I guess I'll just wait here. And you were gone for like 20, 25 minutes or something.
Was it really that long?
It seemed like that long. Maybe it wasn't that long, but it was a long time. And then I'm just like, what do I do? I have no way of getting home. I have no way of finding you. And then all of a sudden I look way in the distance and I see this little tiny thing. You're just coming back and just flying at full speed, getting closer and closer. Like, I can see all the mountains. You're very far. And like 5 minutes pass, you get closer. You do not slow down at all. You're going top speed and then make a 90-degree turn between these two barriers, hit one of the barriers, fly over, like the bike spinning. You hit the ground. The bike hits you, is doing the loop-de-loops, doesn't stop. And you just get up, dust yourself off, like, well, the bike's still going. And you're like, well, I don't know how you're supposed to turn. I don't know how you're supposed to turn if you can't stop. I'm like, what do you mean you can't stop? And you're like, since I couldn't slow down, I just turned into some cornfield and went to the cornfield for a while until I get back to the road. And I'm like, you didn't use the brake? And you're like, there's brakes.
Okay, I think I remember the story slightly differently.
Okay, I would love to hear your version.
The basic gist is correct, okay? But firstly, okay, I was like excited to use this motorbike. Yeah, in retrospect, I should have double checked how do you use the brakes. And then anyway, so I go up, and I'm like, oh, cool, this is a fun thing. Okay, now I'm going to, I've scooted along. I was hoping to be able to make a turn at some point. I was like, oh, wait, there's no turns coming up for quite a while. And so I slowed down. I kind of let go of the gas. And, it just took quite a while to slow down. And, I just kind of turned as much as I could. I kind of dragged it over. I was trying to pick it up and put it down, but I wasn't strong enough to pick up this entire motorcycle and put it down. And so I kind of wheeled it through into the grass. And then I came back.
Okay, the way you described it, I thought you drove through the cornfield.
Okay, then I come back, and then I come in, and like, you're there, and so when I came in, I let go of the accelerator, and then I started slowing down. I was like slow. I was like, oh, how am I meant to stop this? How am I meant to stop this? And then you just didn't know like how to react, and I was slowing down. And so it was like basically going at about 2 miles per hour into...
You're going a lot faster than that.
No, at the end, it was like, I remember I'd let go of the accelerator, I turned, and then it was going very, very slowly into this wall. And then basically a lot of skin was pulled off my leg. And yeah, I had this massive. I had to go to hospitals for this because I was basically. It was like scratching my leg as I kind of tried to turn away, but I couldn't quite turn away in time. And yeah, it didn't quite work. But my leg's all good now.
All right.
Sates wants to share their funny motorcycle about riding a friend's bike on 4th of July. Um, the way I stopped was my friend showed me the handbrake but not the foot brake. His brother had reconnected the handbrake incorrectly to the gas, so Xates had faster and faster. I mean, Xate's story sounds like, at least Xate wanted to learn about the brakes. In retrospect, like, I think the real lesson here is know how to use the brakes before you get on a motorized vehicle.
It's good. That's a good takeaway.
Yeah, that's the real lesson. And, that's not a lesson that I forgot.
It's true. True. Everyone, that if you take anything away from this episode, you've learned figure out how to stop before you start going.
On a motorized vehicle.
Yeah. Or any kind of vehicle.
Yeah, that's true. Like even a bicycle, you want to check the brake.
If you're walking, you want to know how to stop.
Yeah, like can you actually stop walking?
Yeah.
So sure. This is, if you want to check me out, stuffbybez.com, stuffbybez.bigcards.com to buy my stuff. Oh yeah, this weekend, if you buy anything this weekend, I'm sending out some free Kitty Cataclysm stuff. Then you've got twitter.com/stuffbez, instagram.com/stuffbez, twitch.tv/stuffbez, facebook.com/thingsbybez, and stuffbybez@gmail.com. I want to say thank you to everyone who's been, and thank you for this piece of input, Xate. Make sure you not only hear about it, but also test the way to stop. So thank you for everyone for your amazing input. It's lovely to have you as an audience. And most importantly, thank you, Ryan, for being part of this show.
Thank you for having me.
And yeah, I want to finish off by, I had some lyrics. Would you like to share? It's up to you. Happy or exciting or boring or blue. Would you like to share? You don't have to if you don't want to. That it needs a bit of work, but basically, do you want to share something you're looking forward to, hopes or ambitions, something exciting or trivial, important or just fun? As we go out, what would you like to share, Ryan?
Things I'm looking forward to are, of course, the world improving would be nice so that we can get out, we can experience things with people, we can do more. But personally, for me, I'm looking forward to making more books and more things. I've got some books coming out from Scholastic, and I want to make more student ambassador sequels, and I hope that I can find some way to make the banned book club game that we were working on, and then the studio, they stopped manufacturing games because they got an animation thing going on. But I hope to get there's some TV stuff that I'm working on that hopefully happens. I just want to make things. That's what I'm excited about. I like making stuff. Yeah. Whatever medium, whatever format, interactive, non-interactive, I like making stuff.
I mean, I like that as a kind of thing to generally look forward to. I'm looking forward to making more stuff as well. I'm hoping that the Bezzy budget boxes, I'm able to facilitate the funding because, frankly, people have pointed out, it's a lot of work, but I don't view it as... at the start of this year, I pretty much realized, yes, there's some board game work that I can do and can get paid for, and there's also a lot of board game stuff that I want to do that I will not get paid for, but I still want to do it. Do you know what I mean? Because it's about that self-expression. And so, hopefully I will be able to get Categoric Hell finished. I'm going to do a lot of drawing tomorrow and Tuesday. and so that Chris can scan it all in. We can work together and play some games. And then I'm going to, start. Hope that, as time goes on, I can continue making stuff and at least, not be out of pocket with it all. Because it's a bit of a bummer when you like make a whole bunch of things and then you're actually like, yeah, I would have been financially better off if I hadn't done this at all. Which, but sometimes like it's like, why are you doing it at all? And I want to say Alan's looking forward to looking up your stuff. First some breakfast though, then lots of football watching and playing. Yes to making stuff too, and thank you very much for the song. Oh yeah, and I've got some special food in the fridge that I brought down with me that I'm going to have for lunch. So I'm looking forward to that. That's good times, and I might get to see Chris and McCall today. That is super exciting. Sorry to kind of ramble on. As we close up, I know we talked a lot about it, but we never really explained what's his band book club, what's his student ambassador, your most recent books. Give us like the quick couple of minutes pitch.
Well, let me see. Band book club is the true story of my wife's time growing up in the 1980s in Korea when basically she didn't know it, but she was growing up under a dictator. And she discovered this by reading banned books. She joined a banned book club and her friends were arrested and tortured. And we just tried to tell that story, but from the point of view of just these kids in college hanging out, making friends, going on dates, and just experiencing these. And it was originally just kind of like this could happen elsewhere, and then like in the time it took to make the book, it all came true and like history repeated itself already in America, and it seems quaint now, but it's a very timely book for what's going on of authoritarianism and protest and fighting back and whatnot. Student Ambassador, that is so new, I don't have a copy in Korea with me yet, is kind of a book that's kind of an adventure story, like you said, of what I wish it was like to be a student ambassador. And it's just this kid that travels around the world having adventures, solving mysteries, and kind of the kind of mystery where, like, as you read it, you can put the clues together as well with the person. And I tried to make all of the elements real things in the world that you can learn interesting facts about as you read, and just funny characters getting into trouble and solving mysteries.
Oh, I didn't realize there's a trailer for this.
Oh, there's a video trailer, yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to wait, let me do that. So with these kids talking about it after the facts, I guess.
Yeah, they're just describing the story.
Oh, Alan Oughton asks, is the book read from the left to right or right to left?
It's a Western book. It's read from left to right. All of them are. Yeah.
In Korea, are books left to right also?
Yeah, books are left to right. It's in Japan that they're read right to left. Korea has the same reading order as English.
Well, again, thank you to everyone for joining in. Thank you, Ryan. And as I look quickly to see if there's any people to talk about that's on Twitch right now. I will wish you all adieu. I hope that you have a wonderful day. Feel free to share, spread the word. For all the next streams, if you want to find out, look at stuffbybez.com/streams. And there is only one thing left to do, which is to say bye, 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 bye. This is a goodbye song. Bye, 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 bye. Thank you for watching along. Bye, 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 bye. This is the end of the show. Bye, 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 bye. And now it's time to go. Bye, 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 bye. This is a goodbye song. Bye, 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 bye. Thank you for watching along. Bye, 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 bye. This is the end of the show. Bye, 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 bye. And now it's time to go. Bye-bye. You're allowed to say bye-bye if you want to, though.
Bye. I didn't want to interrupt your jam, man. It's a song
It's
of the
all
summer.
good.